Here on the Bible Forum. If you're watching the news today, almost at any point in the day, you're hearing about Israel and you're hearing about Iran. Iran is ancient Persia and in drag. Given Iran and Israel's mutual resolve in meeting their completely contradictory objectives, and given Tehran's aim of turning Syria into a forward base for direct Iranian operations and Israel's determination to prevent it, and given the prospects are high that a war will break out between Iran and its proxies against Israel, what would it look like? Well, the war will be mutually destructive. But Israel has one advantage that Iran doesn't. It has a public that is firmly behind its democratically elected government. And it exists that way in both word and deed. Israel is firmly committed to its red lines. The reddest of all is that Israel will not permit Syria to be turned into a forward base for direct Iranian operations and a manufacturing center for precision-guided missiles. The Islamic Republic of Iran is equally committed to making both of these things happen. Secondly, if war does break out, it will signal the end of an era ushered in by the October 1973 war and formalized in the peace treaty with Egypt, which was Israel's most powerful Arab enemy at the time. That treaty marked the end to interstate wars between Muslim countries and Israel. Would Iran attack Israel directly and make do with activating Hezbollah? Tehran might decide to attack directly for several reasons. One is its perception that a Hezbollah-directed missile war might not be sufficiently costly to Israel to deter it from continuing to attack the Iranian infrastructure in Syria. This would also bring in its wake the danger that Israel might choose to retaliate directly against Iran. The terrorist group Hezbollah has been carrying the majority of the weight. They're Shiite, meaning they are militant Muslims. And after almost 2 decades of battle, the Shiite birth rate in Lebanon has declined. In 2004, it slid down to equal that of European birth rates, which is less than replacement levels. Because of this, experts believe Iran will attack Israel directly. However, as Iran has no air force and very little capacity to dispatch troops directly from Iran, they would be prey to Israel's air force en route. Iran would probably opt for a missile war in Hezbollah and likely take part. Her weakness in the lack of what experts call existential liabilities. Iran exports 90% of its oil and gas from the single port, essentially on the island of Karg, 100 miles southeast of the tip of the Iraq-Iranian border on the Persian Gulf. The revenue Iran derives from that oil and gas amounts to at least 40% of the government expenditure and around half its foreign reserves. The port of Bandar Abbas on Iran's southern tip is responsible for 90% of its container trade. The goods brought in by container represent about 15-20% of the total trade, but they are goods that support the Iranian quality of life in the 21st century. One can safely assume that the Israeli Air Force has given much consideration to addressing these 2 major points of Iranian vulnerability. On Israel's side, her country is small and her population is dense, but it makes her highly vulnerable, especially on the coastal areas. However, her people are strong and they're dedicated to Israel's survival. And that means Israel will be more aggressive than she will be passive. Her history, 5 major battles in the first 40 years of life, should cause her enemies to think twice about pushing too hard. And given Israel's advanced technology and American support, any overt move to destroy her will be met with an overwhelming response. Iran, Syria, Gaza, and a host of lesser enemies are not so committed. They have tremendous zeal, but on the battlefield they are outclassed and outfought. May not look that way to them, given their ability to inflict harm upon Israel. However, consider the father who wrestles with his small children. He usually gets the short end of the fight due to his effort not to hurt them. Israel is treading light today. Even at the Gaza border, Israel takes care not to be too combative, to be too destructive, especially of civilians, especially of children. But in an all-out war, I believe that Israel's enemies will pay a terrible price. What do you think?